Where have we left off? Moving on to the next track, Town with No Cheer. Well, where's everybody going to sit?
Please clap.
That was bad. Let's go ahead and listen to the song Swordfish Trombones, Tom Waits. We're moving on to the next track here, of course, naturally. Let's go ahead and give it a run. We'll discuss it after. Here we go. The pipes are calling.
It's harder than blazes and all the long phases. There'll be no oasis for a dry local grace. There'll be no refreshment for a thirsty jackal. From Melbourne to Adelaide or New York. With newfangled buffet cars, faster locomotives. The train stopped and serviced it less and less often. Oh, there's nothing sadder than a town with no cheer. Vic Rail decided the canteen was no necessary there. No spirits, no bilge water, and 80 dry locals. And the high noon sun beats 104. There's a hummingbird trapped in a closed down shoe store. This tiny Victorian rhubarb kept the watering hole open for 65 years. Now it's boiling in a miserable March 21st. Wrap the hills in a blanket of Patterson's curse. The train smokes down the xylophone. There'll be no stopping here. All you can be is thirsty in a town with no cheer. No bourbon, no branch water, though the townspeople here fought a Vic Rail decree tooth and nail. Oh, it's boiling in a miserable March 21st. Wrap the hills in a blanket of Patterson's curse. The train smokes down the xylophone. There'll be no stopping here.
Like the train tracks.
All you can be is thirsty in a town with no cheer.
I really love when we get to hear Tom singing in this sort of like very, very blue and sad, melancholic kind of tone, especially with the surroundings when it comes to the music there. So here we're going to have the harmonium that's going to be playing a big part here, played by Tom Waits, and a little bit of synth from him as well. And I love the way that melody just, to me, it sounds like just raindrops, just like these little raindrops that begin. And I'm talking not like a thunderstorm, nothing like that, but just a calm and melancholic rain that begins to become a slight downpour on the city as I see Tom walking kind of sad through the city and just alone with his thoughts. And I think that melody, that drip is just gorgeous, like absolutely beautiful. The bagpipes are featured here briefly as well. That's going to be performed by Anthony Clark Stewart. And I like how that begins in the opening, kind of calling from the back and then eventually just kind of relinquishes itself into the main melody and groove of this particular track. And like taking Tom out of the equation vocally for a moment, musically, this is just phenomenal. I think the atmosphere is just beautiful and, like I said, dripping with that melancholy, but still, in a sense, holding its head up high to an extent. And of course, when Tom comes in vocally, his voice is as gritty and scratchy and textured as ever. And man, does it just make this really beautiful contrast in the music. I know that I know that not everybody likes Tom Waits. Cool. But and while his voice is shocking, I think, to some extent when it's featured in an atmosphere like this, or the many that we've heard, isn't that what makes it so much more captivating to an extent? It's not just a pretty, silky, smooth voice that's singing over silky, smooth instrumentation. It's something completely different. And I think that adds something a lot more to it, a lot more meaningful, a little bit more gravitas towards it. It just adds so much more to the equation. And I love that. And he doesn't try to smooth it up, when he's singing in here. He's doing his thing. I really, really like that contrast in the music that he brings. And the music is so light as well, while his voice has a certain kind of heaviness, Well, it's hotter than blazes and all the long faces. There'll be no oasis for a dry local grazier. Really nice rhymes there. There'll be no refreshment for a thirsty jackaroo from Melbourne to Adelaide or on the Overlander. With newfangled buffet cars and faster locomotives, the train stopped and serviced less and less often. There's nothing sadder than a town of no cheer. Vic Rail decided the canteen was no longer necessary there. No spirits, no bilge water, and 80 dry locals. And the high noon sun beats 104. There's a hummingbird trapped in a closed-down shoe store. This tiny Victorian rhubarb kept the watering hole open for 65 years. So, I mean, he's kind of talking about the railroad was one of the major inventions and inventions of transportation when it came to the expansion of the U.S. across the West and stuff, and connecting, of course, from sea to sea in the U.S. And so, in a sense, he's, describing, of course, the towns that would pop up along the railway and, provide jobs and housing and food and all these things and lives for people. But now, those stops are not as needed, those smaller towns. And this particular one he's talking about, I mean, here he's saying from Melbourne to Adelaide, so Australia, of course. I'm just talking U.S. because that's what I know. But I see it's Australia. I know Melbourne and Adelaide. But I think it's really, really interesting how he describes this almost death of a small town where so many lives, as he says, 80 dry locals are now there. Now it's boiling in a miserable March 21st, wrapped the hills in the blanket of Patterson's curse. The train smokes down the xylophone. I love that use of xylophone like train tracks. There will be no stopping here. All you can be is thirsty in a town of no cheer. No bourbon, no branch water, though the townspeople here fought her Vic Rail decree tooth and nail. Like they tried, but it's a losing battle. Now it's boiling in a miserable March 21st. March 21st isn't that bad of a date. It's my wife and I's anniversary. Wrap the hills in a blanket of Patterson's curse. The train smokes down the xylophone. There'll be no stopping here. All you can be is thirsty in a town with no cheer. I also view the actual title of the track in two ways. A town with no cheer, of course, no happiness, nothing to celebrate. Okay, I got that. But also when you drink, if you drink with someone else or many other people say cheers. Well, there's no cheers happening. Right? Everyone here is thirsty, dissatisfied, and eventually it seems like this town will perhaps die off, basically. I think that the way he approaches this is Really phenomenal. And I'm sure there's many, many other layers deeper than that, but I think those layers explored are very satisfying to listen to. Let me know what you guys thought of the track, of course, in the comments down below. I appreciate you all being here. Please come on back by tomorrow. You're thoroughly invited. Love to see you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, your afternoon, your evening, your morning, and I'll see you all later. Bye, guys.